last somebody a lifetime, you know. And it's damn sure better than what you can go buy right now.
Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today we're going to restore an old hatchet and talk a little bit about the process with my friend Chris, who has a side business finding old beat up tools like that and remaking them. And it's really an interesting hobby to me. And Chris was on the channel before teaching us a little bit about forest management, and I did some clearing for him. So Chris, how'd you get into a hobby of restoring old axes and hatchets and things like that?
I guess really I just started walking around finding old hatchets, you know, going to antique malls, going to antique stores, yard sales, and finding all these old tools that were just laying around, and people weren't using them anymore. And then as I got into it, I understood that, you know, most of the stuff being made nowadays, unless you're paying very, very high dollar for it, isn't near as good as what you could buy at a flea market for, you know, $20. And so then I started doing the restoration work and putting things back together and then selling them. So
when I saw what you guys have set up, they've got a booth at an antique shop where they've got a variety of different types of these hand tools, and I was really impressed with the craftsmanship and what they've done. So I'm really interested to see how they do that and maybe learn a little bit about different heads and different handles and things like that.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'll walk you through the process today.
So I think they've got a bucket of heads here and a stack of handles. We're gonna pick a few different types and go over and work on them on the workbench.
Yeah.
So they've got a bunch of collectible, really nice looking pieces already put together, and we'll show you some of those. But I think it usually starts off with finding some heads that have been neglected or just in bad shape. And he's got a bucket full of heads here, so let's take a look at some of those and what you see when you look at those.
So that's a plum right there, a good stamp on it, you know, so we know it's good steel, it's been made well.
So a big part of collectability and desirability is who made the head, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, who the manufacturer is.
And then what's the use case, or what would you call this head?
So that would be a carpenter's hatchet is what that would be, yeah.
Because you've got the nail puller on the back, you can drive with it.
Yep.
You can cut with it.
And you can cut with it also.
Now what do you see? So this is all pitted. You see that? But that doesn't prevent it from still having a lot of life left in it, right?
No, not at all. No. You know, little age on it, little pitting on it, that doesn't, I mean, as long as it's not in an area that's going to affect the edge, you know, where your edge isn't going to be ruined on it, or it's something that will, you know, it could possibly break or anything like that. But you usually don't find them like that they're going to be, you know, in that bad of shape where they're unusable anymore.
So with something like this, aside from just taking off the surface rust and putting a handle on it, is there any other major modifications? Sometimes you have to like reshape the edge and stuff.
Yes.
I mean, that's not terrible, is it?
I mean, it's not terrible. No, there's much worse that'll have big chips and nicks. So that wouldn't be too bad to fix up. That little hatchet right there that'll be a nice little hatchet one day once I get to the point where I can fix it up. But then you run into stuff like this, which, I mean, that little axe head's been so used and ground down over the years that.
So would you guess that was originally 3 inches longer than it is?
It was probably about 3 inches longer at one point, but somebody really took the time and they used that. They got its life out of it, but I still can't throw them away. You know, I find them and it's like I got to hang on to it. I'll put a little handle on that, and that'll be a cool little axe for something. You know, leaving around the house and drive sticks on. Here's one. This is a highly collectible head right here. So same thing. This would be like a carpenter's hatchet is what it would be.
Winchester. So is that are they still a company that's making hatchets and axes now?
I don't believe they're making axes anymore, but Winchester Firearms is what that stamp is.
Yeah, so I didn't know that they'd ever made any kind of a tool like this outside of firearms. And that had a nail puller. It looks like, is that wear, or have you already?
No, that was actually done from the factory that way. So it's got that little divot in it so you can actually get down in there and get a nail out.
Okay.
And then some of the stuff I have, like this is a little rough one right here. This is a man. This is a U.S. man. Man tools. They made a lot of axe heads. They made a lot of heads for a lot of different companies. So you'll see Kelly Axe Works and you'll see Man, and those companies actually they produced a lot of heads for a lot of people with a lot of stats. But that one is actually a Man. That's a 1951. That Man is
1951.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been used a lot. That's what I see with a lot of them, because you can see the hammer side of it, the metal's folded over. Now, so if you're going to sell this is a brand that's collectible.
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking off where it's been hammered to make that look newer?
Yes.
Or is that part of the character after you're done?
Yeah, so I'll clean this up. As bad as this one is, you can see how it's so peeled over on the sides of it. But sometimes I'll peen them. I'll get a hammer and I'll actually just slowly pop that back into shape, and try to reform it. Sometimes when they're real bad, I'll just go ahead and I'll grind that off. Any of these little hangers like this, I don't like them. Number one, they're unappealing to the eye, and number two, they're unsafe. You don't want to hit them against something and have one of these little shards fly off and become a little bullet slinging at you. They can cause a lot of damage to you. So they will go into you very quickly, and they will be sharp when they go into you.
I know there's some of both, but would you say with what we're looking at here, are most people buying these because they want to continue using them, or are most people putting them on a wall somewhere?
Yeah, most people are buying these tools to put on a wall. I mean, occasionally we do have people that actually buy them they want to use them. They want something from from yesterday. They want a tool from yesterday to use, and that's the appeal to me, is that you're using something that's traveled through a lot of hands, and it's still usable. It's just time and care. That's all you have to do, is take care of something, and that's I don't know. It's just appealing to me, the whole process.
You're not just doing axes. You pick up any kind of head like this is. I mean,
Yep.
you probably not as much interest in like the sledgehammers and pickaxes, or.
I do, yeah. Occasionally I'll restore some of those. Just there's an old ball peen head. I'll put a handle on it and kind of restore it.
So this is a Plum brand.
Mm-hmm. That's a Plum. Yeah, that's a Plum pickaxe.
So there's
Yep.
there's probably more. What do you think there's the most interest in from people buying these? Is this the hatchets?
It varies. I mean, it really varies. It varies on what the head is, who the manufacturer is. Double bit axes seem to always do really, really well. People like double bit axes for some reason. I like double bit axes. I like the way double bit axes. I like the idea of it, and that's almost exclusively an American thing, as a double bit axe. A lot of people don't know that, but double bit axes are really an American idea, and we're about the only people that really use them. Canada and North America, we use them, but Europe, they don't use them. Australia, they don't really use them.
So before we move on to anything else, whenever we've got a bunch of small heads here, what's your thought process when you've got these heads on determining the length and shape of handle for them?
Mostly try to do a little bit of research on them to see what would be period correct and appropriate for them, and then kind of go from there and see what we have. I don't make handles. I don't manufacture handles. I don't make my own. I buy them. There's a couple companies that I get them from, and fortunately we live close enough, which is within an hour from us, that we have a very well-known handle company, and we can go down there and pick out a handle. You can walk into their store and actually just take your head in if you want to, and just kind of match things up, because some of the stuff you're going to find is the eye, that's your eye right there, the eye of the axe. Some of these are odd sizes, really odd sizes. So the standard handle or standard eye will not fit it. So we can go in there and we can typically take these in and try to match them up as best we can. And I like to do some of the stuff. I like to do period correct. This is what it would have came with, and then other stuff I kind of like to just go, okay, I just want to do my own thing with it.
Because and then what you're planning to do with it, besides what it originally had, then there's what, if someone's actually going to use it, then length and shape of handle, and then the weight of the head determines how comfortable it feels to actually swing it.
Correct. Yep. So it is a process, where you have to go, okay, what's it, are you restoring something to hang on a wall, or are you restoring something that somebody can use? I always say there's a rough and dirty. You know, you can make it where it works good, it's going to be fine, it's going to look good, and it's going to last a long time.
And then you're probably more likely with that on something if it doesn't have a name on the head and stuff.
Correct.
And you're going to probably fix that for someone who wants to use it more.
Yeah, correct. So some of the stuff that like that one, that's a no name, you know. So that's a little £1.25 head, and that's a no name head. So I'll put a nice little handle on it, and I'll clean it up, and it won't be, as far as dollar amount, there's not a lot of dollars in this. It's just it's really about kind of restoring a tool, you know, giving something back, and you know, instead of wasting, you know, we waste so much stuff that we can go back and put things together and keep them for a long time, and they mean a little bit more, I think.
So I've been in your little shop, and you've got some cool stuff set up in there. Do you have anything here that is collectible, or you'd be kind of proud of and want to show off that's done?
Sure. We have some stuff, and this is, I mean, this is stuff that was just recently acquired. So these are carpenter's half hatchets, is what they are. I will go back through, I'll pull the handles out of these, pull the wedges and everything, and rehandle them. They are not up to what I would consider a good fit, so I will fix these back up. That one.
So this has something driven into it.
Yes. So.
And there's like right ways and wrong ways and 100 ways to tighten up a handle on a head.
Right. And if it's an old head and it still has a handle in it, more than likely it's going to have anything that was laying around shoved into it. So I've taken quarters, nickels, pennies, sickle mower blades. I don't know. I pulled one not too long ago, and it had the guy had driven 7 nails into the head, roofing nails into the head of it. So whatever's convenient, you know. So if you're using a tool and something's wrong with it, it doesn't have to be clean, you know. And if you need to get it fixed, you need to fix it right away. So they'll just drive anything into the heads of. And it seems like the older the heads are, the more stuff gets driven into them. So
does it seem to you like most people? So this handle's been used a lot. It's been hit on things.
Mm-hmm.
It's got wear down here. And do most people shopping for one of these, do they see that as character, or would they prefer to have a new handle that doesn't have all that?
So most people would. I mean, this one is not an original handle, obviously. Somebody has put this handle on. So when it comes to that, you know, that they would rather have a new handle. And you know, this is not a good quality fit. You can see here, see all those gaps, go right there. So this is not a fit head.
And someone wasn't even really cared that much is what it kind of looks like let's just put something on here.
Yeah, let's just put something on. I mean, it is a highly collectible head, though. You know, it is a Winchester head, so it's a highly collectible piece. But yeah, they just didn't do a good job with it. So this one will get stripped down and fixed back up and sharpened and used. And this one's actually a Belknap Bluegrass right here. And you can see a little bit bigger setup, a little finer as far as the details on it. Very, very nice piece.
But again, you would rather change out this handle.
Yeah, that one, what I'll probably do, I'll pull the wedges on it. You can see that they drove metal wedges in the top, which is very common. I mean, and metal wedges up here, they drove those in. That's extremely common with all of these. This is an interesting head also, because if you look at it, you can see the ridges. If you look right here, you can see those ridges coming out into the head, so it helped it, actually the handle stuck in better and makes them grab better. So that's a nice feature to have. This is a King Cutter. That's a King Cutter Carpenters right there. Very collectible. People really search those out and want those. We do. I don't get very many of those. They're pretty hard for me to find, actually. So when I do get them, they don't last very long. People, and you can see on this one, I'll take it back apart. Yeah, handle's loose. I'll take it apart. The handle's not in bad shape, so I'll just clean it up, you know, and pull the wedge back out of it and re-wedge it.
All right, so here are 2 double bit axes. One is King Cutter. This King Cutter looks to me, it's irregular shape between the 2 sizes from being used and sharpened and used and sharpened.
Yeah, very common. Yep.
I mean, how much materials come off of that?
Oh, it's
quite a bit.
No, it's actually not on that one. So it has had some, but it's not past that point that it's not usable any longer. You can obviously tell they used this side of it quite a bit more than they did this side. So typically on a double bit, what you want is a very sharp side, and then you want one that's slightly a little different on its grind, because you want something to, like when you hit a knot or anything like that. So kind of a knot chipper, you want more of a convex grind than you want a concave grind. So one side will take more damage, so when you get something, a hard piece, you aren't beating up your sharp edge.
Okay, so to me these look kind of the same, and they're pretty similar, except one has the brand stamped on it and the other one doesn't.
Right.
And both of those look like they need some work still.
They both need work. Yeah, those are two that'll go through restoration. That one will go through. The keen cutter itself is going to. This one's going to be probably a pretty high polish job. I do occasionally do one or two a year where I'll do a high polish on one. So I'll strip this one completely down, and it'll look like a mirror when I get done with it. So. I don't do very many in that because it's so labor intensive to do, but this would be a good one to do that too. It's got a good stamp, the stamp is deep on it, so it's a really nice stamp, and this will be a nice axe, and this will be a collect. Most people that are buying these are not ever going to use these. They're just too desirable. Yeah,
because I could really see those would look cool if I had my shop finished out, or storing attachments in a building, and this is the kind of thing I can see putting on the wall.
Oh yeah, and some of these, and like I said, some of these, like this piece, I've actually used this piece. This is a Vaughn, is what it is. A Vaughn with an octagon handle on it.
And so not knowing much about it, I picked that up and thought this handle would probably be uncomfortable because it's octagon, thinking it would wear out your hand. But he was saying that sometimes a slick handle, a perfectly round, slick handle can give you blisters worse. And this is a kind of almost a better grip.
It's a better grip. I mean, I wouldn't want to use that all day. That would not be something that, I definitely wouldn't be. If I was wearing gloves, okay, but I wouldn't want to use it barehanded all day long. But it keeps you from, if you do hit, and I'm sure if you've used an axe at all, you've had a glancing blow. And when you have a glancing blow, you've got 3 pounds of steel on the end of a shaft, and it's going to go where it wants to go no matter how strong you think you are. And that helps that from being twisted out of your hand. So that octagon handle.
Did you put that burnt finish on the?
Yeah, so I do the burnt finish. I just like it. It's decorative. So
yeah, it looks cool.
I just like to do it. It's decorative. This one actually is a walnut wedged. So that's actually a hickory handle, and then used a black walnut wedge on it. So that's what that's got. And that one, I would always say I'm going to do more on it. That's actually one that I keep. That's a kind of a keeper for me.
Out of everything we've looked at, I really like this.
Yeah.
This is a Norland. It's got a really nice feel. The weight distribution, the shape of the handle, the shape of the head, and these two are the same length but feel completely different. This is really heavy on the head. So
yeah,
this feels more usable to me. I mean,
yes.
It depends on what you're doing.
Sure. Very specific purpose for this one though. This is a carpenter's hewing hatchet is what it would be. So this would have been back in the days of when you were actually building houses out of logs or a conventional home but built in the 1800s where you were cutting out notches. This was what this would have been used for. So this was an actual carpenter, and
that's why you need that weight on the head.
Yeah, and short. So short handled, because you're probably going to be you're going to be sitting on a wall. You're going to be cutting into something. So it needs to be where you can maintain it and you can actually handle it. It's very. So I actually made this handle on this axe. So because I just couldn't find anything that appropriately would fit it. This is actually an underhill. This is an underhill axe. Is what this is. So this axe is from, I believe, 1885 is what this is. That's when this one was made. So
wow.
Yeah. So it's a very old piece, and how underhill axes, they're good steel, great steel, and one of their Lizzie Borden. You ever remember the story of Lizzie Borden? She killed her mom and dad. It was an underhill hatchet is what she used on there. So that's a kind of a dark piece there.
It's not a recommended use.
No, not a recommended use. But yeah, this was a fun piece, and this is actually one of my keepers. So this is one that I actually just made for myself. I've never used it, but I just like it.
And that's kind of where I was getting at whenever I picked them up, is that if you don't put any thought into it, or you never have, they both look like the same thing, but they're very different purposes.
Oh yeah, completely different.
And this you would take with you just to do some limbing or something like that.
Yeah, so that would be considered a cruiser, a boy's axe is what it would be considered. It's a small head, shortened handle on it, and very easy to carry. This is a Hudson Bay style head, the way that drops down like that. So that's the Hudson Bay head, and these are kind of my favorite. These appeal to me. You know, they have a lot of eye appeal when you see that. That's pretty axe.
Yeah.
And then here is another, what would be considered a boy's axe, and a more conventional single bit. And this is a Craftsman, is what this one is, made by Sears. This one's from mid 60s, right around in there. So this is an old one from the 60s. And
do any of these companies we're looking at still make?
Norland, no, they do not make anymore. Underhill that we just looked at on the Carpenter's hewing axe, no, they don't.
Is this the same Craftsman tool company that everyone is familiar with?
Yeah, that was sold. That was sold through Sears. Yeah. Yeah, and typically on these, so everybody goes, well, how do you know how old it is? Well, you date this because if you look, it's the paint. See the paint on it? So the paint, we know when they use this style of paint. And so that's kind of how you get to date those. It's hard when they've been completely rusted up and stripped. You know, they look like this. It's hard to actually, paint is actually a remnant of, you know, when the time frame of when it was made.
And then that's little brother, Norland again.
Mm-hmm.
And how old do you think these Norland heads
They're
are?
not old. They're really not. I mean, they're going to be anywhere from within 50 years is what they're going to be. So they're not an old style.
This, I really like that. I mean, that feels good in your hand.
Oh yeah, those do. I actually have two of those. So if you can't tell, these are ones I keep. Yeah, these are ones I like, I prefer, and I just like to look at them. So I keep them. I fix them up and clean them. And this one actually is all original handle too. So this is an original handle axe that I actually found this at a public auction, and it had been in a fire. So when I got it, you could tell the handle was all burnt. The head was, these originally came with a kind of a copper paint on them, and the head was all bubbled up, and you know, you could tell it had been burnt. So I restored this little guy, and yeah, pretty proud of that one. That one was a save. You know, it would have been lost in time and thrown somewhere in the back of a truck, and then just forgot about it.
I think it's pretty darn cool. So you want to go ahead and actually fix one up now?
Yeah, we can fix one up.
Okay, so tell them what you've got now.
So this is an old Dunlap head. This was a rough little head that we had, and a lot of rust on it, a lot of pitting on it. Took it back and kind of got all the rust neutralized. Got the rust taken out of it. On these, I go through wire wheel these. Try to get everything out that I can. I like to wire wheel them. It depends, you know, what the condition is on it. Like on this particular head, I have sanded it also. I've gone back over with 400 grit sandpaper and kind of smoothed it down. You can see here on the poling right here, I've actually cleaned all that up, taken that off. This is an interesting little head. The bevels, you look on that, it's actually got bevels that were already, Dunlap did that when they made that.
I wouldn't have even noticed it. When I see that, it looks like it's worn right there, but that's the way they shaped it.
No, that's the way they were forged.
He said he's been fixing this for me, which is really cool and thoughtful, but it's Dunlap. And I figured that's a fat joke, because I've Dunlapped over my belt.
So this is the handle. Of course, I've already gone through, done most of the fit up on the handle on this. Go back through. If you're ever going to do this and restore one and put one back together, you can do it very minimal tools. So as far as cleaning up a head, really a wire wheel is going to make the big difference on that. You can get a wire wheel on a grinder, and that one is That one's a little looser than what I like, but it's not driven on right now.
So whenever you found this handle for this head, is this the way it already fit?
No. So that that was quite a bit bigger. This was thicker. They're going to be thicker this way and this way typically. So then what I do with these is, and like I said, to do this as cheaply and easily as possible. So I buy one of these. These are Shinto rasps, is what they are. And Shinto rasps chew a lot of wood very, very quickly. So essentially what it is, it's just a bunch of blades that they've put together.
So let's start at the beginning. You found this head and you liked it. So you clean it up and get the head looking good. Then you think, what's the usage for a head like this?
Sure.
How long of a handle do I want? And you were kind of saying this is something that's small enough you can easily take it with you.
Yep. You can pack it with you. You know, if you want to go camping, want to just throw it in your vehicle.
So you decide on a handle length, and then you've got to find what fits the head.
Find what fits, yeah.
And then you're almost always going to have to cut this down. It's not generally just going to...
Yeah, so very rarely. Now, one of the issues that you are going to have with older axes is the eye size on older axes. A lot of older axes are larger, so they made bigger eyes on these things. As time has gone on with axes, they have shrunken the eyes down on them, so handles, you can actually, newer style axes, you can buy relatively going somewhere and you can buy a handle that's gonna get close. It's gonna be a close fit, and then you're gonna have to file it down a little bit, rasp some of the wood off of it and get the wood on there and get that taken down a little bit so you can actually get them to fit. But
a lot of things, it seems like they used to just be everyone used a different size eye in it, and now they're probably standardized more.
They're pretty standardized, but what you run into now is the smaller the eye. It's just like anything. The smaller the eye, the less material it takes to put in there. So you don't have to have that thick a handle head to put in there. So it's got to be a cost-saving measure that the companies use. I mean, that's the only thing I can figure. But some of the old eyes that you run into are giant size, like this one right here. So this is you can see that. See how big that eye of that axe is. That's going to take a pretty big handle head. So that'll take some work.
So what's the next step now?
So typically on that, like if you want to go through here, I kind of like to match everything up. This one's already been done. It's a little looser than what I like. This is not typically how I would do that. But this one's a little bit looser. I can make it tighter with the wedging on it. You can tell it's a very tight fit all the way around without a wedge on it. But this will need to be driven down. Some of the things will need to be cleaned up, like you can see right here. There's just a couple little spots, so I'll go in with my rasp. And I'll just rasp a little bit off of it, clean it up just a touch. So, and you can see, if you feel that, you can actually feel that leaves a very smooth file on there. So doing a little bit of texture on there. So if you when you go to fit an eye on, you're very rarely ever going to have one that you've done this well that's actually just going to slide on there like that. Usually you have to drive them on. So if you ever do have to drive an axe handle on, you see a lot of guys, that you would think that you would beat the head onto the handle is what you think, but that's not what you do with an axe head. So you actually don't do that. You take these things and then you'll get them like that, and then rubber mallet on it, and then you're going to hit them from the bottom. You're going to hit that and drive it in. So what you're actually doing is you're actually driving the handle into the head instead of driving the head onto the handle. So you just pop them on, and you can almost, when you do it enough,
you don't have to have the head up against something for that to work?
No, that's what really kind of people don't understand what's going on. So
yeah, it feels to me like if you keep hitting that, the head will fall off.
No, so if you can look here, see how it's driven that down deeper now?
Huh.
So it's driven the handle into the head. So yeah, you don't sit there and, you would think just the opposite. You would think, oh gosh, I got to drive this head onto this handle. No, you're driving the handle into the head. And you just do it out in the open. I use a rubber mallet, and when you do it long enough, you'll feel them. You can feel it. You can feel it when it'll kind of bounce on you.
I'm gonna stop thinking about that. I think I might. I'll get a headache if I keep trying to think about how that works. If you're driving that on without having the head.
No, what's actually happening there? No, so it's funny that it's just driving it right through, and you can tell if you look right there, see how much it drove it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now it's actually tight on there.
Yeah, it's tight now.
Okay. Yeah. So what's the next thing that needs to be done?
So then what we'll do is, you can see I've already, now on these handles, I go through and I cut that curve cut right through the center of those. And I'll typically use I've used Sawzalls, I've used skill saws, I've used everything to try to do this. But actually, the easiest thing that I found is and this was an old tool that I found, was a miter box saw is what this is. And so the miter box saw blade, thick, very stiff and rigid, so it's easy to cut these curves in these things. So these are not expensive tools that we're restoring one with. This is, I think I bought this at a yard sale for like, I think $2 or $3. So this wasn't a big deal. You know, the rasps are a little bit, they're $30, you know, for one of these Shinto rasps, so they're not a lot.
I bet you can use that for a long time though.
Yeah, I've had that quite a while. Yeah, I've had four years, I think I've had. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a wedge for this. I'm going to let Brock pick out his wedge, what kind of wedge he likes. Popular, walnut, or Osage. So we can go through and we'll look at all of these. So
okay.
We'll take a minute and we'll go pick some wedges out. So wedges, right? Walnut wedges. So these are black walnut wedges. A little set of Osage orange right here. Bose d'Arc,
which I call hedge.
Hedge, yeah, hedge, Bose d'Arc, Osage orange. So popular wedges. Is there any difference? I mean, on what you want, you know? Popular wedges, just about most tools that you see, if they're wood handled nowadays, they're going to have a popular wedge from the factory. Popular is lightweight, it will flex, and so if you're driving it as a wedge, it will actually kind of compress itself and then press itself back out. So a wedge is really good. And Popular's, they're cheap. You can buy these wedges. You can pick up a wedge. Usually go to a hardware store, $1 or $2. Some of the places you go in, you buy a handle, they'll just give you wedges. So they're not very expensive. The walnut, like what you've got there in your hand, walnut wedges. I like them. They're attractive. You know, it's a pretty wedge.
That's my first instinct, is to think walnut.
Yeah.
So I like walnut. I like the smell of walnut.
Yeah, and then of course on the hedge, you know, on these I had a local gentleman actually cut these for me. So these will be used in like hammer hatchets, things like that. That's what I'll use these for.
Okay.
Kind of show you some wedges too. So this is kind of after the fact of these are barrel wedges is what these are. So I very rarely use barrel wedges because really if you're wedging a handle with a wooden wedge and you're doing it correctly, you shouldn't need to put a metal wedge in it. There should be no need for it.
I kind of thought that you always did just automatically put in the wood wedge and then a metal wedge, but not really.
No. If it's done correctly, the only time you should really put any other wedge in is if something's going wrong. If the head's gotten loose, if something else is going on. And these are a cheap fix. Now, on splitting mauls, I will use one of these in the head because I do not want one of those coming apart on me. I don't want one flying out or getting loose. So I prefer, as far as metal wedges goes, barrel wedges.
Okay.
We're going to mark this up, right? So we're kind of going to get an idea, roughly, where we need to be.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at the wedge and sit there and go, okay, where do we need to be with that? And then I'm just going to mark it. So I'm going to know I'm going to need that much wedge. So this is going to be a really, really tight fit. So I'm going to have to take this down. I'm going to have to sand this quite a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty wide at the point of those wedges.
Yeah, so that's why the company the guy I get these from, they're pretty wide.
Yeah, depending, you might be using it on something small or something bigger.
Might be using it on something big. So if it's there, we can take it down. If it's not there, we can't take it down. So I'd rather have them send me thick wedges. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this over to the sander, And I'm going to sand that down. And if you've messed with walnut very much and sanded with walnut, it's really not good for you. It's not good for your lungs. It's really not good for your skin. So it does have a chemical in it that will create blisters. And I'm going to mask up and I'm going to sand this thing down a little bit. So I'll clean that up a little bit. So, see where we're at with that.
How deep are you wanting that to go in there?
So that's another good point. So if you're cutting one of these, so typically what I like to do with that kerf cut right there, I like to go 2/3 the length of the head is where I like to go and kind of go down in there. Is that wedge going to go down in there? Not really. I like to leave almost everything you see nowadays, most of the axes you're going to see at the store, you'll notice that the tops are smooth, you know, so we do have a new one over there. So the tops are smooth. I actually like to leave an overhang so that way it will swell. So not only is it wedged down on the bottom also, but it's also wedged out on the top. So that way the handle is actually holding that head in place instead of you worrying about it getting loose and flying off. So I leave a little bit on the top of them. I just like, and I think aesthetically, I think it looks good.
So we got this little guy right here. Got a hole in this end and a hole in that end. Don't know what that's for. Looks handy though.
Good.
He said this is a cobbler's hammer, which means that it's for making pie, I think. You flatten out your fruit with this end and you scrape it.
So that's a pretty good explanation.
That's what I'm here for. I do the explaining.
Yeah, so that's actually a shoemaker's hammer is what that is. So
Never seen anything like it.
and that one's just pretty much a wood one is the one I have. So there we go. Watch it here.
What are you looking at to know when you've went far enough?
So I'm really waiting for it to start bouncing back at me, right? I'm wanting it to kind of bounce back a little bit, where it's not driving in any deeper than what it is. So we're off a little bit here. See that? See what's happening there?
And straightening it up will loosen it a little probably.
Yeah, and it's going to loosen it back up. So that thing is tight right now. So it's actually, what it's going to do, it's going to make a little bit, obviously this was the part of the head that needed to wedge more because it drove how it flared itself in here, kind of went down a little bit. We're going to hit it one more time and see if we can get it straightened out a little bit. But if they're tight, they're tight. They don't have to look super pretty. So
that side went in more because it needed to go in more because that's where the handle was
needed
looser.
to go in a little bit more, yeah. So that actually, now what it's going to do, it's going to make this wedge be kind of a V. It'll look more like a V instead of a spread out, but obviously it didn't need it as much back here as what it needed it right there. So there's a couple ways to do this where you can wedge those that, you know, change it up a little bit. You can cross wedge them. You can actually put two wedges in, one wedge this way, one wedge that way. But that's going to be a tight little wedge right there. Not going to have any problems with that. So we'll clean that up real quick. Cut that off. Didn't take a lot of it. It wedged out good. Like I said, that was a tight fit to begin with. So we didn't need a lot. We've got about that much wedge in it right here. That's a little shallower than what I typically would want. But this was a really, really tight fit. So on the tops of them, I like to clean the tops up. When I do this, throw some of those hatchets over here. So, little bench vise. Flip that around.
Boy, everything's fancy around here.
Well,
With the wooden jaws on it.
so, yeah, got the wooden jaws on that. You need those. You know, you don't want to damage your head. You don't want to damage your wood. So, Another thing, if you are going to be working around axes and you're going to be restoring axes, so I go to Harbor Freight and buy these little magnetic strips right here.
Okay.
And I get those little magnetic strips, so when I'm working on something, instead of tripping, I'm going to hand me one of those one of the tall axes behind you there. Yeah, that double bit. So if I'm working on stuff like that, then what I'll do, so I don't have it on the floor, edge down, and then put it up like that, so that way I don't accidentally kick it, rub my, put a toe into it or anything like that, and then it just holds the head just enough where it's kind of out of my way a little bit. So these are really handy for, especially if you're going to be doing stuff like this, they're really, really handy. So you're going to take that and set that over the side. So that Shinto rasp that we had, we're going to grab it. So I don't like this, right? So see how that looks burnt? That's kind of, so what I'll go back through is, I'll go back over this with the Shinto rasp, kind of clean this up a little bit. Kind of clean that up just a touch. So I'll go around the sides here. Make sure my sides look good. I'll go in with a piece of sandpaper here. Okay, a piece of sandpaper. Clean my edges up a little bit. And you don't have to do this if you're wedging one. You don't have to do this. This just makes them look a little bit better.
Yep.
So if you know people with gun ranges, this comes in handy. So empty shell casings, you'll go back in here. You want to do a pretty little wedge, little brass wedge in there. Just drive a shell casing in there. It'll wedge it just a little bit and gives it a little bit of just a touch, so it a little aesthetic look. So yeah, if you want to do a little decorative touch, you can, Brock, but if not, it's perfectly fine because it is ready the way it is.
I kind of like the look of it with just the wood.
Just plain?
Yeah.
So we can get it out. You can tell.
And what did you you put this on here with a torch?
Yeah,
or
so it's just
for decorative.
Yeah, it's just a torch. So all I'm using, just a little torch. Very simple setup. Go through and I'll do a little burn on them. I like it. Some people don't. It actually does it serve a purpose is to make it. I think it looks better personally. I mean, I like the way it looks. It actually does help with insect repellents. You know, insects do not like burnt wood. So if you've ever set a wood handled tool somewhere, then they will find it. The bugs will get it, and they will bore little holes into it, and you'll find them all the time. Especially old axes, we find them all the time with the little holes from the bugs getting to them. So that does help a little bit with the deterring of that.
So then would you treat this handle, or have you already with the wax or anything?
I have not treated that handle. No, that handle has not been treated. We can do a couple things. Boiled linseed oil is something that I like to put on the handles. Boiled linseed oil, do a couple applications of that, and then on usually the last thing, I've got a couple different axe waxes. This is just one that I make right here. So this is a wax that I make, and it's it's just a mixture of pine tar, turpentine, and beeswax is what it is. And so this stuff looks really good. It does give you a little bit of grip on an axe, so it doesn't make it quite as slick. And it smells
nice
good.
Smell to
yeah,
it.
It smells good. So yeah, you can,
it's gonna just slightly darken it, which that oil you were talking about would do. That basically it's gonna darken it a little bit,
the oil's gonna
and then
darken
it's a protectant.
Yeah, and a protectant too. The pine tar really helps with that. The turpentine helps it penetrate, and then of course the beeswax is going to help waterproof it and keep it over
So is
time.
this similar to using the linseed oil, or is that something you do? You just do that after?
This is something I typically do after. I'll put the linseed oil on, and then I'll use the wax after this. I don't like to heavy. A lot of guys take their they'll BLO their handles. They'll actually put them in vats of boiled linseed oil, and they'll let their handles soak for a long period of time. I found that when you're trying to put a head on with a already oiled axe handle, it's not fun. It's they will bounce and slide off of you. So, and they're no fun to wedge either when they're like that. So, last step is I always do that on the last step. But we can definitely, I'll get a little bit of boiled linseed oil, and we'll go outside because I'm not going to do that in the garage. So we'll go outside and we'll oil it up, and you can see the difference on it. Okay.
Great.
So boiled linseed oil, right? Don't drink this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not good. So we'll pour a little bit on here. Trying to get some on here. There we go. And you can see that's going to bring out that color in that.
Now, do you know what kind of wood this handle's made out of?
This is hickory. Yeah, this is
most
hickory.
common. Is that the most commonly used?
Hickory and ash. Yes, yeah, those are going to be about the two most common handles that you'll find. Hickory, really good shock absorbent wood. So, and ash is very similar to it. So
That darkened it a lot.
It darkens it quite a bit. With BLO, one of the things you can do with it is I'll typically do 3 coats of this is what I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do 3 coats of that BLO on there, and that will, best thing you can do with it once you put it on, so we'll go right on the top here. And then if you ever watch the axe videos, the guys doing the axes and everything, this is always the shot they always do. They always do that right there and clean the wedge up, and you know, they put the oil on the wedge, but you know, we're making something to use, we're not making something to hang on a wall right now. So we were going to make it to use, or make it to hang on a wall, we'd spend a lot more time on cleaning some things up with it, but that's not what this axe is going to be for. It's going to be actually to be used. So
Yep, well I got a bunch of 36-inch oak trees at the property. I was thinking of taking one down with this.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me come see me next year when you get that done. Yeah. So, and the best thing to do with this, set them out in the sun. So when you get done putting your coat on, set it in the sunshine somewhere and let it sit for a little while, because you'll be amazed it will suck that right into that wood. And then we'll go back through and we'll do a couple more coats over the top of it and go from there.
And then you're using the linseed oil on the handles. Are you putting anything on the head as a protectant or anything?
Typically, yeah, what I'll do is I'll wax the heads. I just put a wax over them. That's the easiest thing to do. And I actually use this, feed and wax. That's what I use. So I use feed and wax on the steel. Pick that up at any hardware store. It's a great furniture polish. It's conditioner. You can use it on your handles also, but I like to put it on the heads because I just like to put a little bit of a barrier. Now, every time you use an axe, what's going to happen with that axe? It's going to encounter water. It's going to, you know, when you're cutting that wood, it's going to knock that wax off of it, and it's going to get water on it. So if you put an axe up, as soon as you use it, when you come back out in a couple days, you're probably going to have rust on that axe. So just clean them up after you get done, throw a little bit of wax on them, and maintain them. You know, it's just about maintaining your tools and keeping your tools clean. I probably ought to follow that advice on my workbench too. So
right.
I need to
So now we are going to actually engrave that axe with this is an X tool.
This is an X tool. Yep.
Like a model number on that?
This is a D1, if I remember correctly.
The engraving machine here is very versatile, and my best friend has a similar one that can engrave metal, glass, wood, cloth, leather, basically anything. And we've got some cool things coming up that we're going to be doing with it. And actually tomorrow's video, I've got some pretty cool content coming with this specific axe.
Put a little wax in it. Open it up just a touch.
He set me up with a boy's axe. Like I always wanted to tell him I can handle a man's axe. I feel a little bit insulted.
Yeah.
Make you feel better, you can call it a truck axe.
Yeah, truck axe.
Yeah, it's a truck axe. Yeah. Well, nowadays everybody calls them cruisers. That's what they call them. Cruiser axes. Well, and it'll last somebody a lifetime, you know. And it's damn sure better than what you can go buy right now.
That is awesome. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to show us a little bit, and this is incredible.
Yeah.
So, hey, I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Brock. Yeah, anytime.
I appreciate you guys taking time to watch. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.